Hey everybody, it's your old pal Brian Hunt once again. Thanks for another episode of 60 Seconds of Risk. Today I have the distinct pleasure of talking to one of the most learned individuals, the most experienced individuals I know as respects to the Texas power grid, and that is Chrysta Castañeda. Chrysta, thank you for being on the show.
Happy to do it.
Now, Chrysta, obviously you're a very experienced trial lawyer with respects to oil and natural gas, but then probably a lot of people here know you ran statewide for Texas Railroad Commissioner, which, by the way, has nothing, the oil and gas industry commissioner has nothing to do with railroads, so a little false advertising there.
It is.
So you ran 2 years ago, correct?
I was the 2020 Democratic nominee.
Correct. And so a lot has happened since then. And I just mean people in my audience know, especially in Texas, we had, let me put it this way. We went to high school in Connecticut, and there were times we lost power, and everything was power driven. The water, the pump, the heater, electric, so it became one big igloo. And I always told my wife, I ain't moving back to Connecticut. I'm not living in Connecticut. Needless, I ever expect there'd be 5 days in Texas where the entire state pretty much shut down. I got very fortunate. I didn't lose power. But I know a lot of my friends did. As a result, had a lot of power damage. Property damage as a result of breaking pipes. And I know that whole concept, there was a whole issue about deregulation. Do we need to be part of this, the larger grid? And then now this summer we have rolling brownouts and concerns about, again, issues with the grid. In short, how did we get to this point? How did Texas get to this point?
Oh, it's so interesting, Brian. We, in the late 1990s, decided that we wanted our electric grid to operate on free market principles, in that it was determined by, supply and demand, just the way you determine the price of oranges, for example. Now, you can't provide electricity and know that it's going to reliably be there just on supply and demand alone. So there's a whole agency called ERCOT, or Electric Reliability Council of Texas. Reliability's in the name.
Yeah.
That is set up to both make sure that electricity flows from the power generators all the way through to houses and businesses, and to settle the financial transactions relating to that market.
Right.
The problem is that ERCOT in 2021 did not sufficiently prioritize the reliability portion of the grid. And in fairness, there are things that are beyond the ERCOT regulators' purview, such as, for example, making sure that there's enough natural gas to drive the generation plants, and the Railroad Commission is the one that controls the reliability of the natural gas supply. So all of the huge agency operations were not sufficiently prioritizing reliability, and there are things that are in our grid relating to the provision of power that are simply beyond ERCOT's control, such as natural gas, such as, for example, whether the wind is blowing or the sun is shining, but those are things that are known that we can take into account. What we couldn't take into account, the risk that was unknown in 2021, was the fact that the private natural gas suppliers would not be able to deliver to the power plants.
And I think this is a great topic to bring to my audience, because we talk about risk, and risk can come from many factors. And a lot of things we just assume the lights are going to be on. But I think we learned the hard way during the great winter storm, and then also recently this summer, that unless there's enough supply and demand keeps on spiking, there's going to be an issue at some point. So what is your position you think can be done to improve the resilience of supply? Is it being able to be connected to the rest of the grid and the rest of the United States? How does that work?
So having the interconnections would have helped some, but it was a very unusual event that the entirety of the state was under that winter weather event, and even being interconnected with the western and the eastern interconnects would not have been able to supply enough power. The other thing that can happen is ERCOT can prioritize reliability and make sure that we as Texans are actually paying for power that we may not be using at every moment of the day. It's a little bit like having extra money in the bank. You'd really like to be not having to have that savings set aside, but our power grid needs it. Another thing that could be done, and I think is starting to happen, is we need better distribution lines. We need the ability to deliver the power that's being generated by wind and solar, for example, not to be stranded where it's generated, but also to be connected to where people might be using it. A great solution for some of that would be to have distributed generation in the form of solar panels on your own roofs, solar panels on the roof of this high rise in downtown Dallas, where we're actually making the electricity and using it close to each other.
Yeah. And if anything, as we've seen, the state keeps on growing. More people come here, and then we're going to probably more likely keep on seeing hotter summers, maybe colder winters with changing climate change. That means more need for actual energy. And one of the things I find kind of, at least in the past 2 years, a lot of things have happened. People don't understand or participate. And now we're seeing with the invasion of Ukraine by Russia, cutting off gas supplies from Russia to Western Germany or Germany. They're having to scramble for additional natural gas, and that might even be coming from us. So there's a lot of demand now for maybe finite amount of resources. And in my mind, it's correct me wrong, increasing natural gas, clean energy is an option, but also just even remember me understanding like even the natural gas drillers, they'll flare or release natural gas. Like you basically let it go, correct?
Well, yeah. In my 2020 campaign for railroad commissioner, my signature issue was, why are we flaring enough natural gas, which is the intentional lighting on fire of natural gas as a waste product with no beneficial purpose? Why were we wasting so much of it that it would have literally powered every home in Texas during the winter storm and all year long? That's how much we waste.
And to me, like I talk to my clients, it's a question of risk and being resilient or having mitigation plans. And people like Bulk can say, well, that's going to cost more money than you're going to pay for your natural gas. Well, I would argue you're paying for the disruption that occurred 2 years ago, all the property damage, and your property rates are going to keep on going up. So resilience and usually costs additional capital, but the spend there hopefully is way better than the actual damage that occurs on the backside.
That's right. I mean, the saying from our forefathers and foremothers, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure.
Yeah.
I mean, that's exactly, if in ounces and pounds, that's 16 times as much to fix as it was to prevent it in the first place, and it may be many, many more times that by the time we see the financial washout of the 2021 storm.
Chrysta, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. Everybody, again, I hope you enjoyed this topic. Like all times, if you want to be on the show or have a topic you want me to cover, please post on LinkedIn. You can also subscribe to my channel on YouTube and also see the links to these on Twitter. And also, as a sidestep of this conversation, our next conversation will be talking to the owner of R-Squared Electric, Christina Rossini, who will be talking about natural gas generators and how that can be a part of resilience to your own operations. Until next time.